Hey guys, welcome back. This is Dr. Marva, and today we'll be talking about a question that was asked in the last time's INICET exam, that is copper deficiency myelopathy. The manifestations of this condition can be identical to that of subacute combined demyelination of the spinal cord, which is seen with vitamin B12 deficiency. So let's have a look at why do you get demyelination due to copper deficiency. Well, from your biochemistry, you are aware that copper plays an important role in methylation reactions, which are important for formation of myelin. Because of copper deficiency, these methylation reactions are hampered, so you get a demyelination of the heavily myelinated tracts. Mainly, the dorsal column is affected. Second, corticospinal pathway is affected, so the neurological manifestations are identical to that of SACD. If you run an MRI spine on these patients, the manifestations on T2 images would be hyper intense signals, mainly in the cervical and the thoracic part of the spinal cord. So you can understand why these patients would be having spasticity, because the corticospinal pathway is getting affected. And because the dorsal column will be affected, so there would be sensory ataxia. Very soon, I will list out the manifestations in sequence of this particular condition. But first, we need to understand what are the reasons behind development of this non-compressive myelopathy. You are aware of the fact that copper per se is absorbed from the stomach and the duodenum, and there is a special transporter which helps in, I would say, trafficking of copper. Well, though I will talk about both Menkes and Wilson disease towards the end of the discussion, but at the moment I just want to say that in Menkes disease per se, it's gonna be ATP7A defect, which will result in a defective absorption and an excessive loss of copper from the gut. But in this condition, the primary reason why you get a copper deficiency could be extensive GI surgery. If a patient has had resection of stomach or a part of the stomach or of the duodenum, then these patients can be having copper deficiency myelopathy developing. And the surprising thing is that even hematological manifestations akin to macrocytic anemia can be seen in copper deficiency. The second important reason can be zinc overload. Why? Because copper and zinc, they both compete with each other for absorption by the GI tract. So if a patient is doing too much of zinc, for example, COVID-19, you see everybody was literally abusing zinc. So there's a possibility of copper deficiency developing, though obviously, you need zinc overdosage for a longer duration to cause these manifestations as extreme as I am explaining. The third and the important reason would be malabsorption syndrome of various etiologies. Therefore, the absorption part would again be hampered. And if any patient is on prolonged total parenteral nutrition, then TPN again would not be able to provide the right amount of micronutrients. So why is copper so important? Copper is important primarily because of the fact that it plays an important role in methylation reactions with respect to myelin formation, as I explained to you. And most importantly, this copper also plays an important role with respect to the bone marrow. You see, copper is an important prosthetic group in the key enzymes which are responsible for hematopoiesis. So there's a distinct possibility that you might be having cytopenias. Yes, cytopenias, where maybe two cell lines may be affected, maybe three cell lines might be affected, and you might get a hematological picture which might be identical to that of myelodysplastic syndrome. So now, on the basis of this background information, let us list out the clinical features that would be seen in this particular condition of copper deficiency myelopathy. And I highlight once again, hematological manifestations will also be given. So every time in the exam, when you are attempting or thinking in terms of diagnosis as SACD due to B12 deficiency, keep this differential diagnosis in your mind as well. Now, coming to the clinical manifestations of this condition, there would be demyelination, one of the dorsal column, and second would be of the lateral corticospinal pathway. So varied manifestations would be occurring. Well, this disease would be more common in older age group because these are the patients who might undergo GI surgery for varied reasons or could be having dietary deficiencies. And once the manifestations will occur or the copper levels will decrease dramatically, the first and the foremost thing that would come in the patient would be a gait abnormality due to sensory ataxia. Now, please remember the fact that he might actually mention Romberg sign or Romberg test in this condition. You can imagine yourself in a Titanic pose, arms you're spread apart with your feet slightly apart and you're standing. And if I ask you to close your eyes, you are not going to fall because your spinal cord, the dorsal column, is relaying information of your joint position to your brain. But in these patients, because the dorsal column is hampered, the person's brain, when he is closing his eyes and he's standing with his feet apart, because the brain is not getting proper input, the person will start swaying from side to side. Do remember that in Romberg's test, if a person starts swaying from side to side, even with the eyes open, then it could be cerebellar disease or a vestibular problem. But with eyes closed, it's primarily talking about dorsal column getting affected, and it's mainly the heavily myelinated tracts whose manifestations would occur earlier. A lot of time in MCQs, he might actually mention the word posterior and the lateral columns of the spinal cord are affected. What he means by posterior here is the dorsal column. By lateral, he means the lateral corticospinal pathway getting involved. Now, a very interesting feature would come up, which is that because even peripheral nerves can be affected, peripheral nerves are also having myelin. So therefore, he could write the word patient on examination as having absent ankle jerk. Why absent ankle jerk? Because there's a peripheral neuropathy, lower motor neuron lesion. But now he will surprise you by writing brisk knee jerk. Why? Because there is also a demyelination of the corticospinal pathway. See, corticospinal pathway, whether it gets involved in the brain or in the spinal cord, it will always cause features of pyramidal tract lesion or upper motor neuron lesion. So in the same patient, you would be having two things, a feature of lower motor and upper motor coming up simultaneously. In fact, MCQs where I have specially explained absent ankle jerk with brisk knee jerk could be conditions like Friedreich ataxia, subacute combined demyelination of spinal cord, and the third one is what I'm teaching you today or highlighting at the movement. And though I've described this in the AIIMS solved paper, but still the point is I thought that I'll just make a video on this so that you can refresh the information. I repeat the fact once again, this particular statement is described by me or in the textbook, in fact, for Friedreich ataxia, subacute combined demyelination, and even for copper deficiency myelopathy. So that's a very peculiar statement that I made. Over and above this, because peripheral nerves are getting involved, so he might actually describe paresthesias, especially in a glove and a stocking distribution. You very well know that whenever there's going to be a peripheral neuritis happening, then the distal manifestations would occur. Now, the fourth manifestation would be a little surprising, but the point is because corticospinal pathway is getting involved, so there could be spasticity. And because this condition has a preponderance to involve the cervical spine mainly, so he might write the word spastic tetraparesis. So this person is having weakness, but it's of the upper motor neuron variety because the corticospinal pathway is getting involved. I want to highlight that all these manifestations, if given to you in a question, first thought process of yours would definitely be B12 deficiency, but this definitely has to be kept in mind. At this particular junction, let's have a quick look at what will be the lab workup of these patients. So when I run an MRI spine, mainly in the cervical spine, so any part of the spine can be involved, but usually we find cervical spine getting involved. In the T2 weighted images, there might be an increase in the signal, there might be hyper intense lesions that might be visualized mainly with respect to the posterior and the lateral part of the spinal cord as I highlighted. Now comes the most important part of this discussion, that when you will be doing serum vitamin B12 levels in these patients, the values will turn out to be normal. You thought it is a presentation of SACD, but B12 levels are normal. You obviously will have to do the traditional tests whenever spinal cord is involved. So we thought it could be TAPE dorsalis, but CSF VDRL, you very well know that VDRL we mainly do for neurosyphilis. I mean, in syphilis, always we do a FTABS, but when neurosyphilis, you do a CSF VDRL. In this case, I wanted to rule out TAPE dorsalis as a manifestation. Then I will also run an autoimmune panel on the patient, and this is also going to be turning out to be negative. So you can see that I've tried to rule out the common causes. It could be autoimmune reason, it could be syphilis, it could be B12 deficiency, but none are turning out to be, I would say, conclusive. And since everything is normal, I ran a serum copper. Now, serum copper, when was tested in the patient, the values were almost undetectable or very less. Along with this, there was definitely a low serum ceruloplasmin, which will make you think, are you dealing with maybe a case of Wilson? Now, Wilson obviously occurs in younger age group, 10 to 20, and there would be a KF ring, there would be neurological manifestations, behavioral issues, handwriting changes, dystonia. I mean, there's a separate lecture on Wilson disease that I've highlighted. So there's absolutely no reason why this kind of a presentation can ever be messed up or I would say confused with Wilson disease, because the age of presentation and neurological profile is totally different. Then you would do a very important test, that is urinary copper, because urinary copper is always elevated in Wilson. But in this particular condition, because there's a deficiency of copper, there would be a low 24-hour urinary copper. I want to highlight this fact that though Wilson can be ruled out clinically, but in a scenario of evidence-based medicine, you need to demonstrate these tests. And as I highlighted in the earlier part of the discussion, that neurological manifestations plus hematological manifestations can be seen, because copper per se plays a very important role when it comes to RBCs as well, and especially with respect to bone marrow, because it plays an important role as a prosthetic group to so many enzymes of the hematological system. So you could be having cytopenias, it could be anemia, it could be neutropenia, and there would be a hypocellular bone marrow. And in fact, some of these patients may initially present with hematological manifestations, which helps me to go back to my previous slide and add the fact that progressive pallor could be described in this condition. He might mention the fact that the patient could be having a macrocytic anemia. In fact, some of these patients could be having even a normocytic anemia. Some of these patients can be having microcytic anemia. I repeat the fact once again, it could be macrocytic, it could be normo or microcytic. So it's not necessarily that you would always be having macrocytic anemia with respect to copper deficiency myelopathy, which is associated with hematological features. And therefore, in these patients, this could be the presentation also. I mean, since in the exam they began by describing neurological features, so I have described it in the same fashion. But do not be surprised if he begins by describing the same age group, progressive pallor, anemia, fatigue, tiredness, and then goes on to involve that the patient has a tendency to fall, or patient has gait abnormalities, or the family member has noticed gait abnormalities. So that's when you start evaluating, okay, this is non-compressive myelopathy, and what are the differentials in my mind. And yeah, for the management of this condition, we will be giving supplemental copper. There is no per se, tablets of copper available. So there are some special formulations and powders available that you need to give to the patient, and they would be having little amounts of copper, because too much of anything is bad. You very well study what copper as a toxic agent in forensic medicine and toxicology. So you need to be very, I would say, particular about the formulation which is used, and lots of time it may not be available, so you have to get it imported from abroad. Now, before I finish this, a quick look at Menkes disease. You see, Menkes disease is related to ATP7A, and this why it's causing problem is because this ATP7A, the P-type ATPase transporter, is responsible for copper trafficking. Trafficking would basically mean, like normally we study drug trafficking, we're talking about copper trafficking, that some of it is absorbed and some is lost in the gut. Because of the defect present here, what happens is that the absorption is lesser and the loss in the stool is more. I repeat the fact once again. What happens in Menkes is that the ultimate copper that comes into the body will definitely be lesser, and more will be excreted in the stool of the patient or would not be absorbed. In contrast, in Wilson disease, ATP7B, the problem is in excretion of copper in the bile. Therefore, the levels of copper in the liver will increase, and that's why you get cirrhotic manifestations. So in Wilson disease, it is excretion into the bile that is defective, whereas in Menkes disease, it's primarily going to be absorption via the gut and excessive loss that would happen. And copper is very important for the following enzymes. So let's have a look at what enzymes can be affected, because you can link this with biochemistry. Copper plays a very important role in functioning of monoamine oxidase. Now, because copper is not there, this will malfunction. So let's look at the manifestations. You can very well see on the slide, this child will be having what will be written classically as a brittle kinky hair. And yes, the pattern of inheritance of this is X-linked recessive. So the question will describe a boy. Because of tyrosinase malfunction, why I'm saying tyrosinase, I mean the enzyme is very much there, but it's not getting copper, which is an important prosthetic group. That is why melanin formation will be hampered. This explains the fact that why in this condition you would be having either skin or hair hypopigmentation. I repeat the fact once again, the question will describe a kid who's having a hypopigmentation, not malnutrition, but hypopigmentation with kinky hair. Now he will develop malnutrition subsequently, and he will also be having hypothermia. Why hypothermia? Because cytochrome oxidase, you very well know, is present in mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. If the cytochrome oxidase is not going to be able to function properly, the powerhouse is not functioning properly, energy generation will be hampered, and therefore, especially in colder countries, it will make the child susceptible to hypothermia. And the most important, lysyl oxidase, you see this plays an important role with respect to connective tissue formation. So if there is this lysyl oxidase malfunction, then the blood vessels would not be having proper structural support. which explains the fact that why in Menkes disease do you read about arterial fragility, and there could be like a aneurysm in the aorta that could simply pop off and could explain why these patients would die. So what I have tried to do for this particular discussion of Menkes is that I've tried to link it with a bit of biochemistry aspects that you need to remember, because he can give you a clinical profile and say why is it happening. There are two domains that I've highlighted simultaneously in this discussion for your forthcoming exam: CDM, copper deficiency myelopathy akin to SSAD, and second, I've tried to highlight some of the important aspects with respect to Menkes disease as well. So keep watching this channel, subscribe for updates, and I'll be back with another discussion very soon. Thank you so much.